emergency. Get up on your feet, rise up.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another segment of the Drexwell Seymour Show. Today, I have a few people from the Turks and Caicos Islands who are residing in the UK. I know there's a big concern that many people are leaving the Turks and Caicos Islands, migrating to the UK, and perhaps not returning home. I do not know. I don't even know how many people, have left Turks and Caicos to go to the UK. I do not know the number. I contacted the Turks and Caicos office in the UK, which is headed by Ms. Knight, and she told me only 150 people have registered so far. Of course, I know that there are more than 150 people in the United Kingdom from Turks and Caicos. I have a feeling that there are at least 1,000 people residing in the UK from the Turks and Caicos. And so we want to hear from these individuals. We want to have an open, frank conversation. Why they're in the UK, why they're not coming back, or if they're coming back. We want to hear these conversations. Now, there are some other individuals who were camera shy and opted not to be on the show. Of course, they sent some comments, and I will also, read those comments during the show. So in the meantime, what I want us to start off, if each of you, the three of you here, if each of you could just introduce yourself, say who you are, what you're doing in the UK, how long you've been in the UK. Let's start off with that right now. Ladies first.
Okay, good night, everyone. My name is Odemia Hall. I am from Providenciales, born and raised. I've been in the UK since July 2021. I guess we'll get into more reasons why, but just to, be brief about it, I did come over to study to further my education. I've been in IT for 11 years, and it's almost like I really needed a change from home, but primarily I wanted to further my study. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dima. Next.
I'll go next. So my name is Stephen Eulis. I am in Glasgow at the moment. I've been in the UK since 2014. Currently, I'm doing a PhD in sociology. So so that's why I'm here to study.
Okay.
Hi there, Clary Asud, born and raised in Grand Turk. I've been in the UK now for going on 12 years. And originally came to study my degree in civil engineering. And then following that, I've been working as a civil engineer here in the UK.
Okay, well, you guys are doing really well, especially in terms of your academic path, of course, or even your work path, because Mr. Oswald and I think, I'm not sure the other two, they're working as yet, but it's very good what you're doing. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, there is a concern that people are leaving Turks and Caicos for whatever reason to live in the United Kingdom. And I know Damien and Stephen said they're studying. Claire, you are there. You've been there now for 12 years. Tell us why are you still in the UK? Why you have not returned home?
I guess for me, it's not a matter of not returning home. For me, it's just a case of when. So I think for me, what I've set out to do is gather my degree over the 4 years, but then seeing how much experience I can gather afterwards, how I can build my career so that once I do come home, I'm able to fully contribute and really see how I can utilize my skills and capabilities to take that forward.
Okay, so you do plan to return home then?
Yes. No,
okay.
I think for me, it's just a matter of another few years to actually get there, to return home, rather than 10 years down the line, another 15 years or so. For me, it's short term before looking to go back home.
Okay. Stephen, I know you came home, I think, one time, I think during the summer, and you went right back. what are your intentions? And why are you still, I know
Um,
you've done your PhD, but do you plan to return to the Turks and Caicos?
yeah, so I actually returned home in August 2021. Yes. In August 2021, I actually returned home, left everything that I was doing in the UK. I stayed home for like 8 months. So I left in January last year. Because a lot of the things that I initially wanted to do work-wise, I realized they were not really happening. And I was running out of like savings that I was saving over the years to actually go back home. So, and because my parents are not there anymore, so I didn't really have that space where I could like say, okay, I'm gonna stay with my parents until like I figure things out. I basically ran out of funds to actually do what I wanted to do, and then the opportunity came for the PhD. So I said, okay, well, I'm just going to go and do my PhD. I've always wanted to do a PhD, just something I thought I would do later on in life if the plans that I had for home had worked out at the time. But unfortunately, the plans did not work out at all. So I just had to look at the best of the situation and realizing the amount of money that I had left as well. So the better option for me was to come back here and eventually, once I'm done with my PhD, see the opportunities that would be home for me to do things that I want to do, because I feel like I wasn't taken seriously enough because of like mostly because of my age, I think, and a lot of opportunities that I thought would have come my way didn't come because of lack of experience, even though I was working for 3 years after my master's. Yeah, so in a nutshell, things did just not work out the way that I thought they would have.
Okay, so if things had worked out, you would have stayed.
Yes, I would have stayed. Yeah.
And I know you said they didn't take you seriously. Do you mind elaborating on that? What do you mean they didn't take you seriously and you
I feel like in applying for certain jobs, it was yeah, no one got back to me on the job that I like applied for. Well, with the exception of two places that actually got back to me. Other than that, no one else got back to me, even after I chased it up to see what was going on, what was happening. It was just like radio silence. And I was like, well, if you're not going to give me the job, at least like let me know. Okay, well, for this reason, for that reason, I've not been able to give you the job, so I could actually move on. So I felt like I was like in limbo for such a long time because I'm waiting to hear back from a potential job that I really want, but at the same time I could be applying somewhere else or do something else in the meantime. But I just never got that. And the jobs that I was able to get, I was working in a resort, and so whilst I was working there, I was applying to different places where I actually wanted to be and feel like I could have made like an impact. But it was just very difficult to get people to respond. So actually, when I came back in January, someone responded to me like around February, by which time I already started working a different job. So it was like, well, I'm not gonna go back now because I've been accepted to my PhD program. So I'm just waiting to start it last year, September, and I'm already working somewhere now. So it took a really long time for people to get back to you. So because of that, you're out of money, so you can't really wait for like five months for someone to get back to you about a job.
I understand. So basically, it's the response time. The lack of response and or the length that of time it take. So it became very frustrated for you, and so you decided to go back to the UK.
Yeah, it became very difficult because firstly, the most important thing, I didn't have any money left. I went with so much money back home, but with everything being so expensive, I flat out ran out of money. I had to go
I,
back home where I know my parents, I could stay with my parents because I had no money left to do anything,
I
really to stay. Yeah.
I understand. So Damien, tell us about, you say you, I think you came in 2021, you came to pursue your studies. What are your intentions? Do you plan to return to the Turks and Caicos?
Well, currently, before that, I am working. I'm working as an IT delivery support analyst with a law firm. I do plan to return back home after studies. I'm enrolling in September for the cybersecurity and digital forensics program. It is 4 years because it's integrated with a master's degree, and I do want to return home because I feel like with that field, I can make a big impact within the Turks and Caicos. But I'm with Stephen if it's going to take a lot of red tape and time to get a suitable job, something that fits our skill set and our experience. I'll return back to the UK, to be honest.
Okay. You'll return back to return to Turks and Caicos, you mean?
If I go home and I'm like go through that experience that Stephen went through,
Oh,
I'll
okay.
return. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we have another participant. I'll let him introduce himself before we go to Clary. It's a chat. Could you introduce yourself and tell us how long you've been in the UK?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jatu Ulysses. I'm related to Stephen, the person that was speaking earlier. So I've been in the UK for 6 years now. I'm currently working in the cybersecurity field for HMRC. So it's like the government in the UK. Other than that, you can go ahead. Yeah, so I have family ties back in Turks and Caicos. We have like businesses and so forth back home. But like I say, you can. I joined late, so I don't really know where we're up
No,
to.
but I mean, do you plan to return home?
I don't really, because to be fair, I've double checked and so forth. It just depends on what's happening. If it's just because then when you look online and everything you read about is just basically hotels. They're not trying to develop any other field or anything like that. There's other things to do, like there's major things to do that's underdeveloped in Turks. Say for instance, transport. We can work on that. We can work on other avenues instead of just tourism. But every time you look online, it's a different hotel being built, and the MPs taking pictures. Like that's something to be proud of. I mean, it's just from my point of view. However, if things do change, yeah, of course, Turks is always home. It's tax free. There's other ways to make revenue, but we just have to go about it the right way, I would say. Like, for instance, I always compare Turks to Singapore. It could become the Singapore of the Caribbean, We're still new, we're still young, and there's a lot of room for improvement. It just depends on which initial steps that's going to be taken to get us there, or who's going to be willing to take the steps.
But okay, I hear what you're saying, right? But even though there are a lot of hotels, and any of you can interject anytime you want to come in, okay? Even though there are a lot of hotels being built, which is true, but in the hotel industry, there are also many different jobs. You could be an engineer in the hotel, you could do cyber, you could do anything in the hotel industry as well. And if you feel that's what we're focusing on, then why don't you come and establish a company offering your expertise then, rather than waiting on it to happen? Why don't you be the one to start that? Is that a problem?
It's not a problem. It just depends. Like like in Turks again, it's more of a who you are, who your family names is, and all that retarded type of way of thinking. To be fair, it absolutely has nothing to do with the brighter picture of things. Like, say for instance, in the UK, if you're knowledgeable about something and you're good at it, you get hired. You do an interview and so forth. You go from there. It doesn't matter who you are, what's your last name, and so forth. And I feel as if that step was meant to be taken in Turks, there would be a lot of blockage, a lot of people trying to block you. It's just a lot of hassle, especially getting cybersecurity off the ground. It's a very competitive field, and it requires a lot of upkeep and work as well.
Oh, wow. I understand. Wow, that's a shame. I understand what you're saying, because you're saying, wow, you do have some valid points. It's very sad that, but what I want to do before I go any further, I want to read an email I got from someone who doesn't want to be on the show. I guess she's camera shy. So let me just read what she said, and then I want you to talk about this. Okay, she said, there are limited career prospects. Some people said that there weren't a lot of jobs in their fields of study. Yes, there are a lot of jobs in the hospitality field, but other than that, I'm not sure. I think that's what you're saying, Jet. For
Yeah.
example, physician assistants, not sure this person will be qualified to do work. They do data analysis, research, criminology. These are different areas. It's also important to consider jobs that individuals can do straight out of university, else you're forced to get work experience before going back.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to pay people well. It's important to make people aware of job openings and how to apply for them. I know that TCIG has posted stuff on social media, but during that time, there's nothing posted on their website. Why is their website if there's nothing posted on it and you can't apply directly through the website?
That's correct.
And then the next one, state is biased. Some feel you need to know people in order to get certain opportunities in Turks and Caicos. If you don't know anyone, there's no way you would get a job. And I think that's you're just alluding to.
Yeah.
I think considering a lot of things are becoming digital, TCIG needs to keep up with the times, make it easier to apply for jobs and remove the biases. We shouldn't be relying on nepotism, who knows us or our family name in order to get a job. Solution. It would be nice if we could get to see all the Turks and Caicos Islands jobs on their website and apply for their jobs straight on the website. Something like that is in need, or Lincoln. And to be honest, we need something like this for the whole of Turks and Caicos, not just TCIG. The next point was crime. Through social media, this person says almost like every day, you hear someone getting robbed or shot or killed. Now, I'm not sure about every day, but we've had an increase in robberies and crime. Because it's such a small island, it's easy to feel like and wonder who's next. So that's another thing that people are saying they're not going to come back home. In the bigger countries, yes, the crime is also bad, but there's a large population, so the crime feels less impactful. That's a good point. As you know, Turks and Caicos right now, we're like up there in terms of per capita for 2022. Additionally, we need to trust the people that are being paid to help protect us. But some, not all the police officers, seem to be corrupt. The corruption only adds fuel to the flame. And then the next point is rent. Rent is very expensive. Sometimes you feel you're out of reach to someone who just moved back home. That's another point. And another reason, some people have found love and they start a family abroad. And so the other half is not willing to come back and not willing to come to Turks and Caicos. And then some people prefer the life that they can live in these countries. Sometimes living in an island can feel suffocating. And as a culture, we tend to gossip a lot. Sometimes live in a bigger country, it brings a sense of freedom, not being constantly judged. Some people feel like they could be themselves, for example, relating to their sexual orientation, etc. So that's what some of the points that someone texted me to air on the show. What are your thoughts? I mean, to any of you, what are your thoughts about those comments?
Yes, I guess for me, looking at the first point on the jobs and opportunities, I think that's something that I definitely agree with. It's something I've noticed myself as well. It's that I think for us back at home, it comes down to information and the communication of that information. So like I mentioned with the government website, I occasionally go on it every couple of weeks just to keep in track of what's going on, how projects are progressing, what vacancies and things like that are popping up. But usually you find something isn't posted on social media or shared widely until a few days before that post comes to a close. So one of the thoughts I've always had is what we really need to have is some consistent and sort of structured system, either running through labor or running through whatever else department, where you have that system online that you automatically notify people and you have a communication strategy behind it of, okay, we have X amount of jobs going live on the 1st of April. We're going to have persons from the department sharing a profile of what the jobs are, what the role responsibilities are, just to really encourage people and let them know that it's there. Because it sort of runs into the loop of, you post it on a website, no one knows it's there unless they stumble across it. And then we say, okay, no one's applied. But if you had a structured communication plan around it where you're posting on social media, you've got people sharing their profiles, you've got people pushing and sharing, you've got the labor department who has a, let's say, in an ideal situation, they've got a database of skills and experiences where you can say, okay, we've got this person who lives in the UK who's got experience or a degree in this field. Let's send them an email, get in contact with them of, okay, this particular position might be of interest to you. What do you think about it? We'd like for you to apply. Something like that. That's a bit more structured, where it's not just a case of we posted it, no one's seen it, no one applied.
That's a valid point you have made. And I know the jobs are being advertised here in the local newspaper, but I'm just wondering too, Mr. Oswald, I'm wondering how we could utilize the London office. I'm wondering if, because you know that we have a London office. I'm just wondering, based on what you're saying, if everyone living in the Turks and Caicos Islands, everyone living in the UK who are from Turks and Caicos, if they could register with the London office, and the London office could be like that middle person, whereby all the information is in that office, and then you could be like on a mailing list. So when the jobs out there or any opportunities out there, you know, you're on that mailing list. So I think you have a very good point in terms of how the information get to persons. It's a good point.
No, definitely. And I think as well as the London office, and now we've got the different offices in Bahamas, and I guess the US is soon to come as well.
Yes, the US is going to come.
But then I guess as well, one of the thoughts I had, the education department, if you've got a list of students who have gone on scholarships 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you can use that as a baseline as well to say, okay, we knew that this particular person is due to end their course at June in 2023. This position that comes up that matches the degree that they're doing, let's see how we can engage with them and tie them into that, rather than saying, okay, they haven't returned home. At least you give a bit of a push to say, okay, we realize that you've got these skills and experiences. Here's a position coming up. Let's line you up for it.
Yeah. Ademi, you're saying something?
I think my biggest concern in that email is the cost of living. And I can attest to say that, Drax, I've been home since 2009 when I returned from college, 2 years studies.
Where did you go to college?
I went to college in Fort Lauderdale, IT Tech.
Okay.
So that's where I did my associate's degree. And from that time until 2021, I've been living from hand to mouth. And I've progressed more since I've moved here. And that is a big concern for me moving back home, is the cost of living. Because for here, there's pros and cons, like in any other country. And I would say that the UK, one of their cons, if you don't have a degree or you don't have that experience, you're not going to make a lot of money here, but you can still make it. Things are
even
affordable.
Without a degree, you're saying, okay.
Even without a degree, I've settled with to come back in a first line support role because I wanted something that was very light, very easy to transition into university. And Drax, I can say it's less than I was making with Flow, and I can make it. I'm living all right. I can afford my bills. I can do stuff. I can travel. I couldn't do that when I was home.
So you're making less, but you're not living from paycheck to paycheck.
I'm not living from paycheck to paycheck. And it may sound crazy, but it's true. It's been 2 years, and I've just moved on my own in August because I'm with my mom and my niece, and we're making it.
Your mom is in the UK too?
Yeah, she's here. She's here.
Really?
Yeah, she's here with me. You know, and Drax, we're making it, you know, and when I tell people this, they're like, what? And I'm like, I'm making far less. But I can, I mean, I know these guys, they've been here longer than they can probably attest to the same thing, but in the 2 years, I'm telling you, I've gone ahead in 2 years that I've ever gotten in the last 13 years, and of course the UK is a much bigger place, and like the gentleman said, it's not who you know or your last name, but and it's the support that you get here too, because even you go to them and you said, hey, I'm going back to school, and they don't want you to leave. They're trying to find all kind of ways
You
to
mean your
help you.
employer? So
Yeah, the employers. They even offered to pay my school, because the IT department that the firm has is building. We just took on a new head of IT, so he's trying to build up the team. He's trying to get certain skill sets. It's like he had a one-on-one. He said, "Don't leave. We can pay for your school. We can do this. We can do that."
wow, that's nice.
Yeah, and so these are the things, like the person said in the email, that you have to take into consideration. Now, for me, I want to return home because I want to be a part of the change. I want to be a part of the innovation that home, slowly getting on to. But I don't want to be here forever and then be that person behind the fence saying home is not changing, home is not doing this. I actually want to be a part of that change. So that's why for me, I am going to return home. Even if it's for a short span, I will return home and give back my skill sets to the country.
Well, that's encouraging. Glad to hear that, that you will return home sometime at some point in the future. I mean, that's very good. Anyone else have any other comments on the email that I just read from that individual?
Yeah, I think another thing that would help in returning home as well is the amount of years that they ask for experience. Because
Okay.
I've applied for a few roles, and they're asking for 7 to 8 years experience, and I'm just like, obviously this role is not for me. Like I apply anyways, but it's like 7 or 8 years experience. Like ideally speaking, someone like in my age range doesn't have 7 or 8 years experience in this particular role. So it's kind of like, be more realistic with 3 years or 2 years or something, where you could actually, if the plan is to actually bring people back home, we should have like a pathway where okay, well, that person doesn't have any experience, but we're going to train them on the job. We're going
Right.
to train them on the go. Yeah, to get because it's a job. You have the qualifications, and you know how to work. You have understanding. There should be like some training programs where, okay, this person is going to mentor you until you're able to do the job independently. So that way, when you see a job that's asking for experience, you're not too afraid to apply. I actually had a conversation with someone because they were asking for like 10 years experience, and I was looking at the job. I'm like, you don't need 10 years experience for that job. And they told me, well, apply anyways. I did, and I went through the interview process. I didn't get the job, but I did all of that. But I think a lot of people don't apply for them as well because of the
requirements.
Yeah. So I think be a bit more realistic with the experience.
You made a very good point. The thing is, I'll be honest with you, there are some employers who don't really, they don't really need those tenures, but they don't want you to apply. And so I'm going to be bold enough to say that there are some employers who are looking for certain people to work for them. And so they up the number of requirements, which disqualify you from applying. But I would still apply. But you're absolutely right. You don't need a lot of those. And sometimes when you realize the people that they hire didn't even match that criteria that they were asking for.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're absolutely right. What about social life? There was a meeting. The government had a town hall meeting several months ago, and the deputy premier, he mentioned that I want to paraphrase what he said. The Deputy Premier, Honorable E.J. Saunders, he mentioned that a lot of people are also not returning home because of the social life that's in the UK. You got the malls, you got places to go and things to do, and there's not a lot here to do in Turks and Caicos. Things are very, quiet and laid back. Is that a factor? And do you think in not returning to Turks and Caicos, do you think the social life does play a role in deciding whether or not you will return to Turks and Caicos?
No, I think social life would be like the least aspect of
Least.
things. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
that's
I mean,
because
if you're making, sorry to cut everyone off. If you're making a decent amount of money, I'm assuming you can travel abroad. Social life wouldn't really come into consideration, to be fair.
And in
Okay,
addition to that, it comes down to the individual because not everyone is really social. Like for me, I don't go out a lot. You know, I
good
I like
point.
I like the, I like the occasional mall or the occasional shopping, but half of the time I'm at home. Only if if there's a holiday weekend, we'll take a bus ride or train ride and we'll visit a different city. But that is the least, like he said, factor on of issues why people don't want to return home. So no, it comes down to the individual.
Okay, okay.
I think it might
Claire?
be
Mhm.
you might find a few who, like you mentioned, with trips abroad and the access to Europe and things like that, they might say, "Oh yeah, you can hop on a plane for 40 pounds. You can go to
Yeah.
Europe, spend £100, you can get a weekend away or something like that." But I think, yeah, I think that's
Mhm.
probably on the lower end of the factors.
Okay, that's. I know when I left college, university, it was a very long time ago. It was 1990. And when I left Turks and Caicos in 1985, 86, it was always my intention to return home. But when the time came for return home, I was very hesitant. I was saying, man, I don't want to come back. It's boring. There's nothing to do.
Back in
Um,
those days.
yeah, yeah, but that's another point too. It's a different era. So
Yeah.
I understood the concept of the social. Before you're going, if I want to read something else with someone, send me, right? They say persons who've never walked in a park can now take their kids to the park. Like we don't have parks in Turks and Caicos, all right? And so now they're able to spend more family time. That's another reason why they say they are enjoying being in the UK. They say back home, families were scattered, but in the UK, you can operate as a unit. You have things to do. This person also say that everything is catered to tourism. Um, there's nothing in place to ensure family operate in their spare time as a unit. So if you have a younger generation experiencing after studying, applying them for jobs, no response, the same thing that Stephen is saying. All this becomes very frustrated, it creates a lot of frustration. And that's part of the problem that they believe is happening. The exposure, the family living as a unit, no response time. That's the same thing that. What do you think about about going out? I know we talk about social life, but about the parks and stuff like that. Do you think that's an issue too? That we don't have places to go with our family? Or that's
um
not an issue?
I never really thought about it because growing up back home, I feel like I always had places to be with my family. But that might have been because of I live quite close to Alexandra Park. I mean, I know
Mhm.
it's not like a park the same way that, there is in the UK. So I do kind of see if we could have like some recreational space
Mhm.
for families that could potentially help with people who have like family, how they would bring them back. Because I know a few people who have kids I've spoken to, their biggest concern is like how they would be able to bring their children back home, but still keep the same level of life, standard of living in a way. So like after school programs, like all of these community programs that you have here in the UK that are not necessarily present back home. So you would have to pay for like the extra stuff where you would get them here free in a way. So
But I'm living here with my family. We have 5 children. And my boys go to soccer, they play basketball. We got the beach, but nobody goes to the beach. And I know it's difficult, once you move to a big city and with all this exposure, and you and it's difficult to come back home. But where does I mean with all these things, I understand with all these things, but where does the what word I'm looking for, allegiance and to the country comes into play? I mean, because at some point you have to say, this is my country. I love the Turks and Caicos. If I leave the Turks and Caicos, I'm going to be replaced by someone who's not from Turks and Caicos. And we love to complain about foreigners taking over. But if all of us leave the Turks and Caicos to live abroad, then we have to bring people into the country. So what about the patriotism? I mean, don't you think patriotism also play a role in whether or not we should return to Turks and Caicos or don't leave Turks and Caicos?
Yeah, I agree. And this is why I went back home twice. So this was my second time going back home that it didn't work out. Like I do agree that there has to be a sense of patriotism. There has to be a sense of belonging as well. Like you actually want to see something something different from what you're used to. If that's a problem, you want to see change. You have to be able to be part of that change. But at the same time, for a lot of people, it's not really easy. Like for me, I know what I want to do back home, and I know I have to get myself ready to actually be able to do these things. But I know other people who feel like they could do them like right away, and they just don't have the opportunity to do so. So I feel like it would have to. It depends on what people see that they can do, and what Turks and Caicos is actually putting at the forefront at the moment. Like we know tourism is like such an important thing, but there's like other things that we can do when it comes to like education, culture, and like how we can actually fortify these things to create a sense of like community for our people as well, which I think that's what my passion is.
Okay, tell us some of those things you think we could do.
So when I went home last year, one of the things that I wanted to do was to have like a research center where we could go and do cultural research about the history of the Turks and Caicos from a local perspective, from a Turks and Caicos Islander perspective, to connect these dots, to have people know about the culture, about the history, because a lot of it's actually fading. And I wanted to have that cultural experience without it being created to cater to tourism. I wanted something very authentic, not something you're going to see on the Grace Bay Strip, something like that. I wanted something to be very local, to come from the ground up, not something that we're gonna commodify to make money, but to enrich the lives of our people and our culture. And I think
That's
not
nice.
having that is the reason why a lot of people want to go home, want to leave, because there's nothing holding you back. There's no community.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, right? And to all four of you, let me pose this question to you.
Yeah.
If the United Kingdom didn't allow overseas territories to migrate to United Kingdom to work and live, would you be in Turks and Caicos?
Yeah.
No, probably States. I would be in States.
You'll be in the US?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At the
I
end of the
think
day, sorry to cut you off. At the end of the day, I think it's a bigger issue, to be fair. With the cost of living in, you have to have a bottom line of how you're able to live in an island which is supposed to be your own. So if you're not able to eat, you're not able to do other things. So for instance, say if your parents don't have a house back home in the Turks and all that, and you have to pay rent, you have to work, you have to feed yourself, you have to be working 3-4 jobs to make it, unless you have a high paying job, which normally isn't given to Turks Islanders, So I think we have to take a hard look at things, especially try to put cost control down. I think
I agree with the
that's
cost
one of
control.
the I think that's one of the major aspects. And also with wages. I've been looking from time I left Turks up to now, I think they had one wage increase. In the UK, you have wage increase every single year. April, every year, wage
You
increase.
mean, when you say wage increase, you mean minimum wage, because
Yes,
private sector always increasing, I believe.
Yeah, minimum wage is always increased every single year in the UK.
Okay, what year you came to the UK?
2016.
All right, so I think there was an increase in the minimum wage in 2015. I think the minimum wage went from $5 to $6.25. That was 2015. And then
But come on, that's
and then
slavery, right? If you look
this
at it.
government is increasing the minimum wage on April 1st.
So how much?
To $8 and $9. $8 for everybody except those in the security, and I can't remember the other industry. There are two minimum wage, $8 and $9, depending on which industry you work in.
Yeah, but if you look at it, okay, if I'm earning 20 pounds, right, 20 pounds per hour right now in the UK, they can't match that, you know?
How much is that in US?
It's about
Right.
20,
50.
25, 27.
25. Hmm. So the financial state in quality is a big issue. Okay.
Yeah, but then if you look at it, if you're earning 8 pounds, how much is a liter of gas or a gallon of gas in the
That's the
Turks?
minimum, that's the minimum. People are earning more than that. That's the minimum.
That's just the minimum, yeah, minimum
Yeah,
wage.
people are earning more than that. And I mean, honestly, some employers, example, the security company, they're complaining about the increase. They think it's too high because now they have to increase the cost of their services to their clients.
Yeah.
So I know that for a fact that some people are against the increase.
Yeah, but then you just have to target the right audience, I would say. If you're targeting the people that are making the money, then it has to trickle down somewhere. You can't expect to have loyal staff members and you're paying them the bare minimum. They can't even get by to live. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But
Right.
like, I think
so the pay
everything,
yeah, go ahead.
but I think everything correlates. Like, they focus on one industry and one industry alone, which I think in
Yeah.
the long term will probably harm
Mm.
Turks and harm and do, you know. It's just different
Interesting.
aspects.
Very interesting. I mean, okay. Now there is a perception by some of us in Turks and Caicos that some people have moved to UK also, and they're better off being home, and some of them are just on social welfare. Do you know people that is that true that there are some people just in the United Kingdom living off of social welfare, and they rather do that than to return home?
Well, I don't think it's Turks people directly, but there are a lot of people on social welfare. However, being on social welfare in the UK is pretty good. I mean, most people on social welfare makes more than people that are actually working after tax. Because then keep in mind, it's tax-free money.
Mm.
So you get your house paid for. If you have kids, you got kids. Your kids gets paid in. Plus, on top of that, you receive a percentage from the government as well. So you have a standard allowance. I would know this because I work closely with HMRC. So you have standard allowance, you have housing benefit, you have child maintenance or child tax credit, one of them. There's a few aspects of things. Like I say, normally there are people that probably could receive like 2,300 a month from the government just based on having kids and, you know, the government take care of everything else. So it just depends on how you look at it. But some people are rushed off and some people are better off. It just depends on circumstance.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Whether it be true or not, it is on the individual. Is what is the goal you set out. You know, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But I think home need to focus on the small things. Like you know, we're trying to tackle the big stuff. Focus on the small stuff. The thing is with the UK is the small things that helps us.
And what are those small things? What are those small things?
I'll point out one thing.
Yes,
I'll point out one thing. You know what's very important in the UK? The banking system. Like I haven't been to the bank in years. I just go, like, if I need to deposit money, I can go to the post office, deposit it straight to my account.
Yeah, it's small stuff that they need direct. You can open up a bank account.
No, I don't go to the bank either. I don't go to the bank either. I use the ATM.
Well, yeah, but it takes 3 days though.
No, it only takes 3 days. It only takes 3 days if I deposit a bank check from another bank. But for example, at Scotiabank, they give me credit up to $1,500 a day. So if I deposit a check from First Caribbean at my Scotiabank account for $2,000, I'll get $1,500 credit right away. Now there's no what do you call it, the clearing house among the banks in Turks and Caicos yet. That has not been set up. And so it has to take 3 days, because if you deposit a check from First Caribbean to Scotiabank and that check is not cleared and that check bunks, that's a problem. So they have to make sure the check clears before they give you the credit. But some banks still take the risk and give you the credit though.
But why it should take 3 years in this current, in the
I hear what
21st
you're saying,
century?
because there's no clearinghouse. The banks don't talk to each other. They don't call each other up. That's the problem.
They should have a interlink between each bank
Yes,
or
we
whatnot.
should. Yes, we should.
But on the bank issue again, I've recently seen on Facebook where transactions were being made, well, fraudulent transactions were being made on someone's account, and then the bank told them to go to the police. I don't know how true that is. I've done numerous research. I've looked into it, and it looks like it's actually accurate. That
Okay,
was
I'm
the
not
instance.
sure. I'm not sure about that. Yeah. But let me have Ademia continue with the small things she said that we need to focus on. That'd be very interesting what she's saying.
Right. So the small things is the processes to get stuff. Like he made a good point. Over here, you can open up a bank account from the comfort of your home. You can send money to any bank. You don't have to be on the, within the same bank to send to do transferring of funds. Someone texted me a point just now and said, it's persons move over here because they have disabled kids. You got kids with speech problems. You
Special
got
needs.
Yeah, special. There we go. Special needs stuff. So those are the things that we need to focus. We just focusing on how to bring in revenue, but we're not focusing on how to keep the people there, how to sustain the people that's there now. And over here, I find processes being so easy, even with jobs. What the gentleman said earlier, 10 years experience. UK don't even ask for that. I don't think I've ever seen a job advert where you need more than 2 years of experience. Like
Wow.
focus on those small stuff. Let's start with the airport. Like, look at the airport. Let's fix those things.
Well,
It should
they're
be
supposed to
easy.
be, well, the airport, I'm glad you bring that up. The airport is a Provo Airport you're talking about, right?
Yes.
The airport it's a big project. And so they are working on we're gonna have a new airport terminal, but of course the process is very, very lengthy. Especially if they decide to go PPP, public-private. They have to get permission from the UK. They got to do a lot of consulting. They got to do a lot of different studies. So they are working on a new airport. I mean, the Premier says supposed to start this year. I don't know how realistic that is, but they are working. They see the things, but I agree with you say the processes of getting things done.
The processes.
Yeah, are very time consuming and lengthy. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, like just to get you made a post the other day about renewing. I think it was you're getting your license plate,
Yeah,
getting
my
police
license.
record.
Mhm.
So those things that we don't even have to stand in line for stuff like that over here. And you go home and you have to go back to that, and no one really wants to deal with that.
And
Someone
I
just texted me
understand.
again. The scholarship process. Like someone even asked me why didn't I get a scholarship from TCIG, and drugs is exhausting. The requirements, all the things that they're asking for is exhausting. I got approved funding in less than a year. Well, months, days over here, I should say. I got accepted from last year, and I got my funding in 3 days.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's those little things that they
Wow.
have to work on. And I didn't realize the airport was a big project. So
It's a
but
big project. In fact, I was told it's going to cost $350 million.
well, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
But I think it is the small things we have to fix. That cost of living. Someone texted me the other day and it was asking me, I don't know if they realized I was here, if I know apartments that's out there. Like people can't even find places to live right now and jobs. So it's those small things that we have to fix,
Yeah, the housing market is really sad. The thing is, a lot of people also are now using their apartments for short-term rental.
Short-term rentals, yeah.
And so it's very difficult for anyone to find long-term rental. Now, I know the government has this Department of Housing that they plan to address, but of course, that's not going to happen overnight.
No.
So the housing is a big issue. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so and going back to your question, it depends on the individual. Whatever is what their goals are. So it doesn't matter who's out here on welfare. Everyone have different circumstances, so we can't judge and say, well, this person better off whom. You don't know the person's situation.
You're
And
right.
a lot of people weren't making it home. I had great jobs after college, but I still was living from paycheck to paycheck.
You're right.
Because it was just those small things that was in fact, my mom was retired and And she's having so much fun. She's having more fun than me out here, you know. And just the thought of wanting to go back home, she told me, she said she's not ready, you know, and she's lived her life. So can you imagine a young person?
You should have had your mom on the show, man. I'd love to hear from her.
She's waving at you.
Yeah, but she could talk. She could talk.
She said she's camera shy. But it's the small thing. And he and the gentleman, he works in HMRC, and I'm sure Drexel doesn't even take a week to get stuff.
What is HMRC?
Well,
It's like the government.
The government.
Oh, okay.
So it's like
So-
there's different branches. So you could be like the passports, immigration, and all that. But I do like the cybersecurity element to it. So
Oh,
it's more
okay. Okay. And why would you move? When I asked the question earlier, if the UK didn't allow us to come to UK to work and live, you say you're going to US. Why? Why? And so it seems like you don't want to be here then.
Now, I actually do want to be here, but at the end of the day, I have to be realistic with myself and what I'm trying to achieve.
Okay. So your personal goal.
Turks limits you very much, to be fair. Like I say, if your peoples aren't known or anything like that, you're very limited to what you can actually do. Even if you're applying for a business license and all that, you have to jump through so much
the process.
hula hoops.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
it's
wow.
crazy.
Wow.
Like, okay, for instance, again, I have like a business in the UK. You know how long it took me to apply for my business and all that?
1 day?
1 hour. 1 hour.
Wow. I understand.
Exactly.
I understand the frustration. But you know what? A lot of people, despite what all you're saying, and I agree with your comments, right? But there are a lot of people who are not from Turks and Caicos, are coming to Turks and Caicos because they see the opportunity and they are doing well while we are leaving the Turks and Caicos.
Yeah, but they're coming to Turks with money. So say if I have 100,000 pounds,
Not
I
all
can
of
go
them.
to Turks.
Not everybody.
Not all of them, but if they don't have money, they have connections. I can even point out a few examples. Say, you know, the commissioner, when he was in the UK, he was in a millionaire. I'm sure he's a millionaire now compared to what his salary is. I
don't know about that. I don't know.
I was reading. I don't know how accurate it was. It was a sum of 14,000 a month. Most commissioners in the UK don't make that.
Anyway, I want to read something else from another person who couldn't make it on the show, right? Okay, this person says, I'm studying a health field that is urgently needed in Turks and Caicos Islands in many facets. However, I would like to know, as a Turks and Caicos Islander, will I be offered the same stipends as other foreign healthcare professionals that are urgently needed in TCI? Will I have the same treatment of being offered a housing allowance, among other benefits, while I relocate, if I relocate to TCI? My immediate parents did not reside, nor can they accommodate me to live on their property. Until I could settle down, will those same benefits be offered to me as any other healthcare? So basically, this person is saying they want the same or more benefits as anyone who comes in a contract. What are your thoughts on that? Ms. Oscar?
As they should.
Yeah. No, I don't see why not. I mean, it's the same issue that we see with the primary school teachers, where every year there's a big case where we don't have enough teachers, we need to recruit. And one of the arguments that's raised is local teachers don't feel that they are receiving the same level of benefits. So if that is the case, if we're struggling to fill the positions at home with our local people, why not offer them to put them on the same playing field as those who come from outside the country? Why shouldn't there be that same level? Although, yes, someone coming in externally, they don't have access, they wouldn't have access to a car, they wouldn't have access to homes and things like that. But as an incentive for our own local people who may be there at the moment, who are working in a separate field, or here in the UK, in the US, the Bahamas, why not offer that as a baseline where that can also interest them to say, okay, yeah, I'd consider this if I can get a housing allowance, if I get car allowance, that would help me living day to day, living month to month.
You know, I think it's a good point. Sorry, you saying something, Damien?
Just to add on to Damien's point.
Go ahead, Jack.
Just to add on to Damien's point, if they aren't able to receive the same benefits, they should be able to receive a additional a bonus on their, annual
Mhm,
income or
mhm,
whatnot. If they're not
mhm.
able to get the additional benefits, I would say just to make up the difference a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point actually, because if we want to attract and we want to retain the locals in the field, particularly teaching, I think we need to review the salaries. Now, I do know that I think the difference between the locals and those on contract, I believe they get a gratuity at the end of their contract, and they also get a housing allowance. Now, my understanding from the private sector, the reason persons are given housing allowance or rent is because these individuals came to Turks and Caicos Islands. They may have a house where they're from, and it may not get rented. And so they'll have to pay two rents. They have to pay two bills, their mortgage in their hometown and rent in Turks and Caicos. So what they do, they offer them a rent allowance to help them because we wanted them here in the country. That's my understanding. The reason why they give rent allowances to persons that they bring in.
I guess a counter to that would be if I've left, let's say I was in Barbados, if I left Barbados and moved to Turks for a contract, what's stopping me from renting out my property in Barbados and then also receiving a rent allowance when I come to Turks and Caicos?
Mhm.
Yeah,
You're right.
and also, do they even verify that? Like the person actually was paying mortgages back.
I doubt they verify that. Yeah.
So it's a gray area.
Yeah. So doesn't it though concern you that a lot of people are moving? I mean, do you have any idea how many people? At the beginning of the show, I said I don't know. I mean, I believe in my gut feelings telling about 1,000 people. Do you guys have any idea how many people are in the United Kingdom? And does it concern you that locals are leaving the country? Does it concern you being one of those locals who have left?
Yeah, it's very concerning. It's very concerning. I wrote an article about that. I'm a writer. Yeah, it's very concerning. And we actually, when you look at the people that are leaving as well, these are like the people that we need to be home. Like the question that you received from the healthcare professional. I have a friend who's a nurse, and she wanted to go back home, and she went home to do a placement, but she couldn't find a placement at the hospital. Like they wouldn't let her do a placement at the hospital. Just flat out told her no, they're not taking anyone to do a placement. So because of that, that kind of like discouraged her because she thought she could have done it at home and that would be like a pathway to get a job at the hospital, but that didn't work out that way. And now she's working at a hospital in Manchester. But all of these people are people that we need. We need teachers, we need healthcare professionals, we need all of these different types of people. But at the same time, I'm not exactly sure what the problem is, but there seems to be like a disconnect between realizing the people that we actually need and how to make sure that we actually keep them. Like with for people who've received like scholarships as well. I think there should be like a way of like retaining these talents as well, because people were sent away to study for a particular reason. So I think the whole intent was to go back home and to give back to the community. Fair enough. If you can't find like a specific job within that field, then there should be another way of helping people to find like work to actually keep them home. But I feel like there isn't really a lot being done that way to keep people or to make sure that people come back to actually fulfill their part of the bargain. So like it's very concerning because like what will happen eventually, there'll be like massive brain drain because all of the people that are leaving home are like exceptional and brilliant people, and they're going to come to the UK and go elsewhere and find opportunities, and they're just enjoying it. So it's kind of like there's really no reason for them to come back. I feel like there's almost like a hostile environment when people go back home and they realize you actually want to work. It's almost like why do you want to do that? And from the people, because we do talk about that a lot. I feel like a lot of people back home think we don't talk about returning home, but that's a conversation that we have all the time. But it's kind of like, how are we going to facilitate that, because firstly, cost of living is very high, but like job wise as well, it's very limited, and I feel like we don't have enough things like people would start like a program but don't see it through. So it's kind
That's
of like, yes,
true.
we have all of these programs going
That's
on,
true.
that's great, but then we don't see it through. So
Mhm.
while I might benefit from it, the person 2 years behind me is not going to benefit from it. So we're always constantly like restarting things. Or like when you think something doesn't exist, but you actually deep down it's there, but it's not being like implemented. So I feel like we need to find a way to actually make sure the things that we want to start like are actually starting, and they're actually staying alive. You know, people are
Right.
actually looking after how to bring people back and keep them, because a lot of people that I've not spoken to one person that don't actually want to go back home eventually, but they have to think about like their personal career goals as well and what they want to do,
Yeah.
and how that factor in.
I understand that. But are any of you, are you guys registered with the London office?
Yeah.
I didn't even know it existed until like a month ago.
So you're not registered yet. What about you, Mr. Oswald?
Yes, I believe so.
What about you, Chad?
Yes, I am, and I also am registered with. We have like a student page for like student that left
Oh,
Turks, and
yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
am.
Well, okay, so we talk about the cost of living. We talk about the job opportunities. What else we talk? I mean, I haven't heard you guys say anything about health, because I mean, some people say that a lot of people, criticize the health facilities in Turks and Caicos, and they get very good health treatment. They have access to this great health in the UK. That's another reason why, some people move to UK. And of course, Ademia mentioned about the special needs. Persons with special needs, children, feel like there's a neglect. I know that the government schools, each government school has a special needs teacher in it now. And my understanding is come September, they would also have a special needs center, which is the building behind Abundant Life. That's my understanding, going to be a special needs center. I also did a survey. I don't know if you guys participate in it. And based on the survey, 62% of the persons say that they will return home. About 48% say it was working. 41% say they are going to school. With all of this that we discussed earlier, and I know Stephen made some recommendations. What other recommendations do you think we need to do to ensure that we keep the people in the country, or even if people go away, that they return home? What do we need to do? Even starting with y'all, I mean, what would it take after you finish your degree and everything? What would it take for you to return home? What do we have to do? What else should we do?
I think on that point, I think all of us in some way as Turks and Caicos Islanders, we have that sense of, okay, it would be good as we get older to go back home, to contribute, to sort of build our lives up again. And I think just sort of from my experience, I think in looking at scholarship students specifically, I think one of the key areas that we're missing on is the actual engagement with the students and actually planning out what they're doing and sort of engaging with them to say, okay, how's your course going? What particular subjects are you taking up? How do you see that benefiting Turks and Caicos? Are you looking into any placements while you're there? Or if not, let's see how we can sort of bring in the connections here with the different public sector, private sector companies, things like that. And I think it's that point where you sort of maintain that connection by maintaining that communication. So it's not necessarily a case of, okay, you've got these students going off on a scholarship. Did they go at the end of 3 years, at the end of 4 years, can you come back home? If you're able to say, okay, at each quarter, we'll have our scholarship officer reach out to them, find out how they're doing, find out what they're interested in, find out how we can then use that for the different departments. And you could sort of tie that all together to say, okay, This year, we've sent off 2 students for a civil engineering degree course. We can make that connection with the PPID department and say, okay, when summer comes around, let's see if we can set aside some budget. We can bring these students in for the internships, and you sort of build that connection whereby after the end of 3 years, that person can then see, oh yeah, I know where I can now go back and contribute those skills, rather than some who might finish their course and say, yeah, I'm not sure how I can really fit in, or I'm not sure if there's any opening there for me. So by building that connection and maintaining that regular communication and connection, you're in a way keeping a latch onto these people of, we really need you to be here. I think
I do. I like what you're saying. So that engagement, you think that engagement is lacking. And I think that's where the office should get. I think the office in London, I mean, should be that person as well. I mean, what they should do is hire more people to be in that office and use that as an engagement. I think that's a very good point you made, actually, that engagement with the students, not only the students, even those who are not students, who may already complete a degree in working. We need that engagement. Very, very good point. Anyone else want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll add something. With Turks, I understand, we're still small and we're still developing over a period of time. So everything takes time. But I think we should really start to focus on the technology aspect of things, especially going into, you're going into the AI. You're going into the AI version now. You have ChatGPT. You have a lot of things that's coming up, and we are really lacking and we are really behind. So I think we need to really start to focus on technology, because technology is a very big field. And, you can get protected, like the banks, or power plant, water. There's a lot of things that goes on. Like a lot of people aren't aware of, especially in the cybersecurity element of things. You might think you're safe online when in actual reality you're not. So I think we should definitely focus on that. And I would my sole advice would be definitely moving forward. They should look into, at least try to offer like a IT scholarship, because with
I thought
IT,
I thought they do that, but okay.
well, I'm not too sure, but with IT, because with IT is a skill. Once you learn it, you'll never lose it, and it'll always be in demand.
True.
So it's
So Jack, what would it take for you to return home?
Me, I'm gonna return home regardless, because you have to look at it. The weather's nice. You guys don't like. There's no tax, but it's just you have to have the setup correctly before you make the movement. But me, if I was to move back home, it won't be as much of a burden to me as it would be to someone else, because then like I say, I have relatives that have like houses and all that, so some of the burden wouldn't be too much, but then just the burden part would be like actually trying to get onto the cyber security element, because I've spoken to a few IT people down there, and it doesn't look like they're doing the cybersecurity element as of yet. I know they're doing the networking and so forth. But that would be an approach I would be looking to start for sure.
Okay.
In my experience, Drax, it would always be the cost of living for me. I think when Turks Islanders the average Turks Islander need to be able to survive at home. We shouldn't have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to survive. If we want to do 2 jobs, that should be an optional choice. But we should be able to have 2, 3 kids, and we can see where our money is going. We can be able to afford groceries. We could be able to afford rent. We shouldn't have to be competing with the I don't like the word foreigner, but we shouldn't have to be competing with the other nationalities home. It would always be cost of living for me. We need to be able to survive. And I think that's what the government needs to really focus on. And I know they're trying. I don't keep up with the politics side to it, I'll be honest with you. But I was home November for my uncle's funeral, and I was home for about 5 days. And I spent over $500 within those days, just between accommodation and food, that was it. And and transport. So and it made me realize, I was telling them I was miserable. I was
Mm,
miserable. I was like,
mm.
I'm so glad I made the choice to move. And everyone
Wow.
experiences difference. I
Yeah.
don't know why we have the concept where no one wants to return home. Everyone, it's different. For me, it's
Yeah,
Mhm.
everyone's
experience.
different.
Sometimes
You're right.
we just need a different scenery. We need
Mhm.
to like. I've been in IT for 11 years, but the way they do IT over here is very different. And I'm so glad I came over and I was able to
Mhm.
experience that. So that's something that I can, carry back home and contribute to wherever I go. So
Yeah.
it's very different, but we have to tackle the cost of living. We have to be able. I know Turks Islanders is saying that 2, 3 jobs is not even sufficing, and
Yeah.
it shouldn't be that way. So
Yeah.
we got to start there.
Yeah. Very good point. Very good point about the cost. You shouldn't have to be living from paycheck to paycheck.
No, no,
And
not the average, not the
yeah.
average.
And if you're
No,
in the UK and you making less and not living, that speaks volume. That speaks volume. So
it does. Yeah.
Stephen, before we end, you have anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I just think like once we have all of these things that are keeping people from returning home, but there's a lot of good things that I've seen happening as well, especially people um around my age group, which that was like one of my, like I said earlier, when I returned home, that was like one of my worries because I feel like people weren't taking me seriously. But I've seen people around my age that are doing like exceptionally good things as well. So
Mhm.
I think there's like improvement, but obviously there's still a lot that we need to do. And like Jed said earlier, like returning home for me, that's my end goal. I don't have a problem for rent. Like I have family, aunties, people I can stay with and all of that.
Mhm.
But it reached a time where you're like, okay, how long am I gonna stay with my aunties in their house? Like, so that was like a concern for me. You can't really stay with your parents forever. So you need to be able
Yeah.
to, once you're working, you're actually able to afford like an apartment and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And just before we go, I feel like we need to make a shift where we have things that are with a local focus. Like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to
Yeah.
like heritage, I feel like that's something that's missing that you don't really see in other communities. Like there's like a disconnect from the culture and the heritage. You only see it during like
For sure.
occasions. So
Yeah. Absolutely
yeah.
right. Well, I mean, I really appreciate this opportunity. I think we'll have to have a part two sometime.
Definitely.
What I also plan to do, I also plan to do a show with persons who have returned home. Who are now in Turks and Caicos. I plan to do that as well. Now I know the premier. My understanding is that the premier and the delegation, including the Minister of Education, will be coming to the United Kingdom in May. And so I'm hoping that, all of you could attend and express to them the same thing that we talk about today. And of course, it's going to be on our show. We're going to air this as well. So, and I appreciate your frankness and openness on this. So I just want to say thank you very much. I don't know if anyone has anything else to say before we end.
Yes, I'll just add on to this. There was like I normally follow up on Turks News a lot, so I was
Mhm.
seeing when the prince was visiting how they clean up the roads and all that.
Oh, don't
And
talk about that.
I mean, I just think it should be. I just think it should be regularly done.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree with you. I wrote
I
I
think it
wrote
was
an
your.
article about that actually. I wrote
I
an
think I
article.
just yeah. It was your article I read. Yeah, it was yours.
Yeah.
It should be regularly done. Take pride in ourselves, take pride in our heritage, and at least show people when they come to Turks Island, when they come to Turks, the tourism that at least we taking pride in things we do. We represent ourselves well. Because then if you go elsewhere, most places they do the best they can to keep places tidy and so forth. I think
Yeah.
at least it should be done often, at least not
Yeah.
every 4 or 5 years. And
Yeah.
the MPs as well, they shouldn't be showing their face every time election is around or taking pictures for every single thing they do. Like one thing that annoys me
Mhm.
is every single thing the MPs do take pictures. That doesn't really happen in the real world. Like if they buy
Mhm.
buses, you don't need to take picture for it. You
Mhm.
just make the announcement and move on. You don't need to make a ceremony. Like it doesn't happen anywhere else.
I hear you. I hear you. I agree with you. I agree with you. I really appreciate you guys, and you know, even though you are not living in the Turks and Caicos, you're doing a very good. You're making your life very, very fruitful and productive in United Kingdom. You either working or you're going to school, and you know, at the end of the day, it's a global world we live in. And as much as I love for people to remain in Turks and Caicos, people have personal choices to make. You have to look out for yourself. And if part of your goal is to enhance your career and you think you're better off in UK, then I think that's fine. And I think you should get your experience. I hope one day that, you know, we don't have a huge mass exodus of people leaving. But even if we do, I do hope that people return and be the change that we want to see take place, rather than just keep talking about it. Just be the change.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it can start. I think you could do something even remotely. You don't have to be physically in Turks and Caicos to make a difference. You could do things remotely now with all the technology involved and enhancement. So I just want to say thank you. And I wish all of you the best in your future endeavors. And I hope, you know, in a few years, you'll return to Turks and Caicos and make a difference. Thank you again.
Thanks.
A quick look inside Seymour Home Goods located in Grace Bay. Next to the potty place lamps, pillows, candles, bath and body works, picture frames, bedding, and many more.